Hometown Ghost Stories contains serious and often distressing events and is not intended for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
It began in the vineyards. Spring in Givry, France, 1349, should have brought warmth and wine and song. But this year, there were no festivals, no weddings, and no music. Only silence and rumors. Word had come from the west. Paris was dying. Then Dijon. Villages were emptied in days. They said it started with the boils, hard lumps under the arms, behind the knees, and in the groin. The skin blackened. People vomited blood. Then they fell, and then they died. Not after days, sometimes in mere hours, sometimes mid-sentence. The people of Givry prayed. They avoided strangers, burned herbs in their doorways. The church would hold mass daily, but nothing could prepare them for what came next. The first to see it was a child, a boy named Henry, who wandered too far into the fields chasing a wind-blown scrap of cloth. He returned trembling, whispering of a man at the edge of the vines. A tall man in a black cloak, unmoving, faceless, and hands that were just bone. And in one of them, he carried a long, curved blade. His mother told him it was just a shadow, a trick of the sun. But that night, Henry's mother was dead. No fever, no blood, just gone. The figure came closer the next day, this time seen by more than one. A shepherd spotted him watching from the tree line. 2 women drawing water saw him near the well, though when they ran for help, he was gone. Father Remy, the village priest, wrote in his journal, "A presence walks outside the walls. He does not knock. He does not call. He simply waits." Each night, the figure moved closer, never crossing into the village, just waiting. And then the sickness came. It started with the black swellings, then the coughing. The moans of the dying echoed through stone walls. Bodies piled faster than they could be buried. The gravedigger collapsed into an open pit and was buried with the rest. Entire families locked themselves inside and died together. No one came for them. By the 4th day, the reaper was standing at the edge of the main road, fully visible in the daylight. His cloak didn't move with the breeze. His face was still hidden, but the scythe, rusted and massive, gleamed in the sunlight. They say he raised his arm and pointed once toward the chapel. Father Remy was found dead that night, his journal still open. The final entry read, "He has no voice, but I have heard him. He does not swing the blade. He merely arrives, and we fall." By the end of September, Givry was silent. Welcome in, everybody, to this side content. A bit of a throwback, something we haven't done in a while. Back in the day, we did a bit of a series on the history of ghosts, and this is sort of reminiscent of that. We're going to be talking about the origins of the Grim Reaper. Before we do that, though, I am going to be your host on this journey of the Grim Reaper, Rob Coakley. Joining me, as always, is Jesse Wilkins.
Hello there.
And Dave Wilkins.
Hi.
And I've always been really fascinated with the Grim Reaper. Something stuck out to me years ago watching a documentary on the plague, where there was a bunch of villages that actually were reporting seeing these figures outside of their village, that then they would all give it the same sort of appearance, that it was this black cloak holding a scythe. And I've got some of those to talk about later, but what are you guys' I guess your knowledge on the history of the Grim Reaper? Anything, or just do you have any?
I actually just learned a lot from this little video you presented. I actually thought it was just a urban legend, right? Not like people were experiencing it.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, I didn't realize it was tied to the plague. I just thought like it was a thing that, kind of like Santa Claus that people told, except darker.
Yeah.
Just a little.
A little bit darker.
Just a little bit darker.
It must have been absolutely terrifying to live during the Black Plague, where everyone is dying and dying young and dying horribly. So you sprinkle in the rumor of anything, it's going to just escalate, and people are going to just be terrified. It sounds truly harrowing.
Yeah. And as we're going to talk about, you sometimes just have to give death a face. And that's what they were sort of doing with the Black Plague. We'll jump into it. Anything to add before we start, Jesse?
No, I'm kind of on the same wavelength as Dave, where I hadn't really heard too many of these stories. I mean, I just thought it was like almost, I don't know, a metaphor, where it's like, oh, well, the Grim Reaper is here, and that means someone's dying or something. So
yeah,
I didn't hear more about it.
It's like the opposite of the stork, right?
Yes.
Brings the baby, the Grim Reaper. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, I thought that's where babies came from.
Oh, it is.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not a myth.
Not a myth.
The Grim Reaper brings your baby. I knew it the whole time. Yeah.
I wonder if the Grim Reaper, here's a theory. The Grim Reaper lifts his Grim Reaper skirt up a little bit and he has stork legs. What if the Grim Reaper is the stork?
Oh.
Yep. And that has been this episode of The History of Ghosts.
Yeah. Nailed it. So you guys are sort of on it as well. There's just so many different things that went into this Grim Reaper. So let's just sort of jump into it. The figure we call the Grim Reaper wasn't created by one story or one culture. He was born in the midst of a nightmare. In the mid-1300s, the Black Death tore across Europe, killing somewhere between 25 and 50 million people. In some towns, the population was cut in half. There were no answers, no cures, just bodies and fear, and out of that fear came a figure. The skeletal being in a dark cloak carrying a scythe first appeared in art during this period. He wasn't just symbolic, he was a personification. The scythe made sense. Death was harvesting people like grain. The cloak was associated with mourning and monkly-like orders. The skeleton... Huh?
Monkly.
Monkly.
Quite monkly, yes.
Yes.
The monkliest.
You're the monkliest. The skeleton was a blunt reminder of what we all become. So that is a very important part where he has the scythe. It's interesting that they have him holding a scythe because there was something called, I believe it was called a reap, or a reaper was a shorter blade, but the scythe was actually scarier. So that's why they have him holding the longer one, because he's a tall figure. That is why he holds that particular blade. So what I want to talk about to start is some of the witness accounts during the plague era. And across Europe, people didn't just imagine death, they claimed to see him. In Quedlinburg, Germany, villagers described a tall man in a dark cloak swinging a scythe through empty fields. Crops weren't cut, but days later, the people were. In Brandenburg, 1349, a record described, quote, 15 men with faces of bone and scythes of fire. They passed silently through the village. None were touched, but death came all the same. End quote. So that's two different towns that are having slightly different variations, but describing similar characteristics of these figures coming through, which is terrifying.
Right. It's kind of like that dragon theory where there were images of dragons. We've talked about it before, all over the world. No way of communicating with each other. Although I wouldn't say that these villages had no way of communicating with each other, or areas. Slightly less extreme, but similar.
We'll get it a little more extreme, though. So let's go to Switzerland. And in Switzerland, monks recorded, quote, a bell rang in the night. None walked the halls. By morning...
There were none or none.
None, None.
Okay.
None walked the halls.
So there were none nuns either.
Yes, none nuns. By morning, the brothers were dead in their beds, 3 with smiles, 1 with a scream. End quote.
All right, that's terrifying.
Yeah, very, very terrifying. These weren't shared fictions. These were isolated towns with no way to communicate with each other.
Right, hang on. Switzerland and Germany are right next to each other.
Okay. They are, but it doesn't mean that they were constantly communicating.
Yeah, that's not from one village to the next village. That's
It
a
could
journey.
be.
I mean, yeah, I guess if you're right on the border.
And you're also talking about the plague time as well, where I don't think people are just riding willy-nilly across to different towns on a whim.
That's how they would send messages. They would
Yeah,
ride.
always willy nilly.
Just always willy-nilly.
Yeah, on unicycles.
That was the name.
Unicycle's the only way to ride willy nilly, right?
That was actually the name of the first horseback messenger. His name was Willy Nilly. I didn't know if you knew that.
Yes.
Look.
Yeah.
Is that true? I don't know if that's the greatest joke or the weirdest fact. All right.
All right. In Givry, France, which is where I set the opening story here, death records show that in a normal year that the town saw 28 to 29 deaths, right? In 1348, that number exploded to 649, and over half of those deaths occurred in September alone. Something was happening. Whether what they saw was real or imagined, it became part of the cultural memory. And Givry is an interesting town to look into for the plague because they kept much better records of their citizens than the majority of the other towns. So you can actually see how, like I just told you, 28 to 29 deaths on average for the town around that time period. And in this one particular year, 649. So
that's
the number
bit
is
of a jump. Yeah.
astronomical, right? Like it's just a huge, huge difference. And this particular town, they usually had weddings throughout the year. Not one wedding happened in Givry in 1348. So the town was basically locked down, dying, terrible. The number of how many people died during the plague, you could see the number fluctuate from what people believed happened between 30 to 75% of the population of the earth at that time. So you could sort of see that happen here in Givry, that the number was probably astronomical.
Probably. They probably also had no idea what the actual population of the earth was at that time because nobody would
Well, if
know
you take
that.
into account, because you do have records of like how many died from this country, how many died from that country, and you can kind of just make a general estimate of how many people around the world because everybody knew how many people in their country died from it. And it could be higher because I'm sure there was just cases of, some farmer that never, they're not exactly going around collecting a census at the time,
Right.
or maybe some family on a farm died. So I wouldn't be shocked if the number is actually higher.
Yeah, it's tough to estimate the exact number, but we know that it was huge. Like it was wiping people out.
Mm-hmm.
So where does the Grim Reaper come from? Was this a brand new idea? No, it wasn't a new idea. It was the convergence of older myths. And let's start in Greek mythology. Thanatos was the personification of death, but he was a peaceful, winged youth who brought gentle ends. That image didn't survive the plague. The wings withered, the youth rotted. So they basically started by taking Thanatos and sort of altering that image a little bit from the Greek god of death.
What is the gradual evolution of this? Because it sounds like we're just talking about two different things.
We're going to talk about a bunch of different myths and talk about how they pulled a bit from each to create the Grim Reaper.
But what was because it doesn't sound like they pulled anything from Thanatos to get to the Grim Reaper. It literally just sounds like two completely different.
He dressed in black robes, I believe, in a lot of the things, and he was there. So Thanatos was basically, there's a bunch of different gods of different types of death. We're going to talk about some more from Greek mythology, but Thanatos was their Grim Reaper. He was the one who shepherded people to the afterlife.
Oh, okay.
So that is what
Makes
the Grim
sense,
Reaper does as well. So basically, he was like their death shepherd, but he wasn't looked at in a like people were not scared of him. It was he was their peacefully to bring you to the afterlife. Like not in a, it shouldn't have, he was never looked at in a terrifying manner, basically. Charon, Charon, from Greek mythology. He was the one who ferried the souls against the river Styx. He wasn't death himself, but he was also a guide. And the role, the Usher of Souls.
Was he the one where you give him the 2 coins?
Correct. And that role, the Usher of Souls, became part of the Reaper's identity. So they sort of took these 2 Greek mythology gods of death, and one of them's the god of death, one of them's just sort of that helps shepherd people as well.
Like they're Uber driver of death.
You're right, the Uber driver of death. In Breton folklore, the Ankou, I might be saying that wrong, it's Ankou, is one of the closest parallels to the modern Grim Reaper. He is a skeletal figure in a tattered cloak and a wide-brimmed black hat. He drives a cart or walks with a scythe pointed forward.
I thought you were going to say he drives a car.
The legend says the last person to die in a parish each year becomes the Ankou for the following year, cursed to collect souls.
Oh, that's cool.
His cart creaks in the night, and if you hear it, it's already too late.
That's scary.
Yeah, it's
scary haunting.
So now it starts to get a little scarier.
The old wooden cart creaking. That's creepy.
Yeah.
Because little carts driving by your house and you're sick. You're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, you're like, no, please leave. Please turn around. Get out of here.
Yeah. But then you hear that old, bring out your dead. You're like, oh, shit. That's also not a good sound.
The Aztecs, God, I can't believe I even wrote this. They worshipped Mictlantecuhtli. Definitely nailed that. That's Mictlantecuhtli.
Oh, the Mexicans or the pre-Mexicans.
Yep.
Aztecs used to love their TLs and Zs.
Yes. So he was their god of the dead, ruler of the underworld. He was skeletal, often depicted with bulging eyes and ornaments made from bones and human remains.
The Aztecs were so scary.
Death to the Aztecs was a journey, and Mictlantecuhtli stood at the end of it.
Call him Mickey.
We'll just call him Mickey. Mickey, the god of death.
Bring out your dead.
Yes. In Japan, Shinigami are spirits or gods of death. They don't kill, but they guide. They invite people to die when their time has come. So that's not, they didn't take all of these and use them for the Grim Reaper. I'm just sort of showing like different variations of the god of death across different cultures and how basically humankind needs to sort of give a face, even if it's a faceless face, just some sort of face, some sort of being to death to make it something that we can quantify within our heads.
To make it more terrifying than that, basically. Like, you know what's not scary enough? Death. Let's make it worse.
Yeah. Yes. So the concept of the Grim Reaper was influenced by Western culture, but it also had the deep roots in Japanese folklore and media. And even Kronos, the Greek god of time, held a sickle. So sort of that's another thing that the Grim Reaper personification, they think that people were taking some of the different Greek gods and mixing them up a little bit and using the sickle from Kronos, the scythe or whatever you want to call it, as like your time is up sort of thing, and sort of mixing the two of them together. And over centuries, Kronos became conflated with Kronos, which is two different. It's Kronos and Chronos. So Cronus and Chronos, which is time itself, and the sickle became part of the visual language of death. After all, time brings death, so why not arm death with the blade of time? So that was sort of part of the reason for that. And that's, again, during the plague, right? The plague is one of the craziest things to learn about when you go back and you start reading about the Black Death and what was going on during that time. It felt like someone was coming for them. There was so much death happening,
Yeah,
And-
we covered it pretty heavily in our episode on Pavalia. So if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to that one. That was a wild episode.
Yeah. And people are basically trying to put a face to it. Like and again, it's not really a face. It's a skeletal face. It's hidden in that black cloak. And the image of the Grim Reaper, I think we've become so desensitized to it over the years because you just hundreds and hundreds of years of depictions of the Grim Reaper. But when you actually stand back and look at like the Grim Reaper, it's a terrifying image. Just this bottomless pit of a face in this black cloak with these bony hands holding this scythe. I find it to be one of the scariest things that we've come up with over the years as humans to depict death. It's a terrifying sight.
That is interesting. And I do wonder with some of those early descriptions, because you're dealing with the Black Death and you're dealing with the plague, obviously. And I do wonder if sometimes these descriptions maybe got misinterpreted, because if you think about like the plague doctors at the time, now they didn't exactly look like the Grim Reaper, but you had a lot of these cloaked figures. They have their faces covered because they don't want to get the plague themselves. And maybe this is the first time someone's seeing a plague doctor, or off in the distance, maybe it does look like one of those kind of characters. And everyone's terrified of everything at the time. So maybe it could have been just a misinterpretation.
Think about if you see the silhouette of the plague doctor, right? Because he's got the robe, and he's got that hat, and he's got that long nose. And if he's turned to the side, right, his profile, and you're seeing that silhouette, it could look like he's holding a scythe.
Oh, could, yeah. I didn't even think about that with the long kind of hook nose there.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good point. Point. So I bet you in a couple of those cases that could have been it, where it's just everyone's so terrified of everything and terrified of death, and the family members are dying. Maybe if they're seeing someone like that, and like I just said, especially if they haven't seen one before, they might misinterpret that. Yeah, and it really could look like it's holding a scythe from a distance if he's standing off to the side.
And there's also a time where they didn't know anything about anything, right? It was just the sickness, right, or the plague. They didn't know how to, like, obviously.
Yeah, they thought it was vampires for a while.
Yeah, they don't know anything, so everything's superstition.
Yeah, again, and the vampire thing adds to that point that they just tried to associate someone with what's going on, when it's just shit just happens sometimes, right? Like, unfortunately, shit just happens. The plagues happen, things like that happen.
Shit happens is a crazy way to fucking describe the plague.
Well, it's nature. It's nature.
Shit happens. 70% of the entire world's population might die.
It's the Earth, man. The Earth's crazy.
It's Tuesday.
25 to 70%, somewhere in there.
You watch these nature shows and you just see all this stuff happening. It's like, nature is just nature, man. Nature is terrifying. The things that the Earth does within the animal kingdom.
Oh my God, yeah. Kingdom, the animal kingdom is so ruthless. Like, they had like this live stream. I think National Geographic had it set up of like this camera, and it was showing a nest with these birds, and it was beautiful, and people could tune in 24 hours a day and see what's going on with this beautiful bird family. Then they got a little bit of backlash when the mother just ate one of the weak youngs and fed its corpse to the babies, and they're like, oh shit, yeah, shut it off, this is not for the kids anymore. But it's just nature. Hey,
yeah, there's birds are ruthless too. Like, there's some birds where the young, one of the weaker ones, won't be getting fed. Like, the mom won't feed it. Yeah. And then the weaker one will push the strong one out of the nest when it starts getting fed. It's like, dude, just feed them both. Just figure it out.
Yeah, I remember it out. So, my last house, I was on like what was technically like a nature conservatory. So like there would be like bird walks and things like that. And I was kind of doing like a maintenance gig at the time. You guys know that, but our listeners don't. And it was kind of like it was a good deal. It was a good deal. But so occasionally I would be out and, amongst these people, and they're spotting birds like, oh, that's this kind of bird. I don't know anything about birds. And so they'd be saying stuff. And then like we see a couple birds that are fighting, and then we see one of them chase another one off. And then we see another one just drop dead out of the sky. And they're like, oh my goodness, we just saw a battle for territory, and that one just murdered this one and claimed his territory. I don't know what was actually going on, but all I know is it sounded horrific. And everyone's like, this is the greatest day ever. I'm like, oh, is that what it is? Is that what we saw? This is great for you?
Birds are ruthless.
They are ruthless. Yeah.
They used to be dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
And if you guys are wondering what this has to do with anything, if we want to tie it all back in, plague doctors look like the Grim Reaper for birds, is what I would say with
They
the
do.
long.
Yeah.
They have the long beak. It all makes sense. Anything we ever talk about, it works on this show, is what I will say.
That's right.
Yep.
The plague doctor was the Grim Reaper.
the Grim Reaper. Oh no.
Well, speaking of birding, since we're talking about it, the man who does our disclaimer, that voice that you've heard at the beginning of every single episode, hometown ghost stories contain serious and often disturbing. Yeah. That is, he actually has one of the biggest birding podcasts on the planet. That's Ray Brown from Ray Brown's Talking Birds. I produce this show. Yeah.
The king of the birds.
You'd think, because I've been producing a show at the radio station for literally 20 years, you'd think after 20 years of hearing this stuff, I would learn a single thing about birds to bring something to light in this little conversation that we just had. I've learned nothing.
You haven't learned about ghosts.
I know. Somehow I'm still here. Who knows?
Give us one bird fact. You got to know one. One bird fact that would shock us.
That would shock you.
Maybe not shock us, but make us go, oh.
I think blue jays' feathers aren't actually blue.
I'll take it.
But it's like a thing with like the reflection on the light. That is definitely completely wrong. But something like that.
Fine, I'll put you on the spot.
I don't think I made that up, but don't look it up. I'd like to live in a world where I might have been right about that.
That's our new disclaimer. Hometown ghost stories. Don't look it up.
Do not fact check us.
Do not fact check us.
We looked it up. We don't need you to.
Yeah, you don't need to do it. Just listen to it and move on. Give us a
fine.
5-star review.
Elvis is still alive.
Still alive.
He's a bird.
He's a bird.
He's a bird. And he's not really blue. All right, I think we can wrap it up. This has been History of Ghosts.
All right, so in closing, the Grim Reaper didn't vanish when the plague ended. He stayed, he evolved, he wore different cloaks, changed names, but he remained the same at his core, a figure that lets us look at death without turning away. He's in cartoons, he's in horror movies, he's even been used as a Halloween costume. But he's also in hospital rooms, in late night thoughts, in the silence after the last breath. We might not believe he waits at the edge of the village anymore, but we still believe something waits. He doesn't need to speak. He doesn't need to strike. He merely arrives, and we fall. And that is the Grim Reaper.
Might be the scariest of all of the legends. Maybe not.
No.
The Wendigo's pretty scary.
We've seen some scary things.
Well, there's scary things, but the Grim Reaper theoretically is inevitable.
Right.
Wendigos are scary. You are going to embrace death at some point. So the Grim Reaper is inevitable. So that's why he's scary.
The Grim Reaper decides when to go.
Oh, dude, that is. Put it on a shirt. Put it on a shirt. That was great, Dave. Good job.
Thank you.
Well, if you want us to start doing more of these sort of history of ghosts, I don't know if this was a history of ghosts. Would you guys consider that?
I don't know if I really call the Grim Reaper a ghost, would you?
Yeah. I mean, theoretically, I guess, maybe. I don't know. We'll do more of this shit. Whatever this was, we'll do more of it if you like it.
More of this bullshit coming along.
If you can prove the Grim Reaper's not a ghost, I'll accept it. He
Sure.
can't, so he's a ghost tonight.
All right, he's a ghost tonight. Let us know in the comments what you think. Do you find the plague terrifying as terrifying as we do? Are you scared of birds? Let us know. Leave a 5-star review.
Who wouldn't find the plague terrifying? Like, I would have been fine.
There's someone out there. I'm not going to say the name on air, but we both know somebody that would have been like, I would have been fine during the plague. I was royalty. I was part of the Chicago White Sox. Like
now I
those
know.
People.
Yeah. You might have gotten a little too specific with those details at the end, but nobody else knows what we're talking about, so that's fine. We'll end the show.
Yeah. All right. Anyways, we'll catch you guys later next time here at Hometown Ghost Stories. Peace.
Oh, fuck. It's just me. Thanks for watching, guys. Didn't remove myself. God damn it.